For more on the attempted assassination of former President Trump and the investigation of it, let's bring in former acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf. Mr. Secretary, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So, members of Congress tried getting answers from the outgoing Secret Service director and the FBI director this week. Let's play them.
I'm not going to get into the specifics of the numbers of personnel that we had there. I don't have the details on the timeline. I'm unable to answer details of exactly how the individual accessed the roof at this time.
We don't know the answer to that. I don't know the exact answer to that.
What do you make of the lack of answers?
Well, part of it's an ongoing investigation, but I think those two hearings were quite different. Director Wray did provide some information, not obviously complete information, but he provided much more than the Secret Service director did. And I think in part, she had a very difficult congressional hearing and obviously resigned either later that day or the day after. There is an ongoing investigation. I would encourage that investigation be complete very quickly. I don't think it needs to go on for 30 to 40 to 50 days, as it's indicated that it might. Instead, the American people want to understand and want to know what went wrong, and I think that investigation should be completed in a matter of days.
The FBI director created some controversy, saying he wasn't sure if President Trump was struck with a bullet or perhaps shrapnel. Was that an unforced error?
Yeah, I think it was. I think most Americans, as they watched that video, understood what was going on, and obviously President Trump did as well. If the director wasn't positive, didn't have ballistics back, didn't have the information, should have just not said anything. But by saying he wasn't sure, it was unknown, or it could be shrapnel, I think that, again, just kind of feeds into the narrative here that the American people are like, what's going on? Why don't you know that? You are the FBI, you're the federal government. You should be able to ascertain that. And of course, they came out just a few hours later and said it actually was the bullet that grazed former President Trump. So that was a forced error. It didn't need to occur, and unfortunately it did.
Either way, somebody was shooting at the former president of the United States, which is obviously great concern for the American people. As we look at the scene in Butler, Pennsylvania, there are still many, many questions remaining. Here is Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson on that.
At 5:45, the sniper teams of the Secret Service did receive the photos of Crooks, and they knew he was at the AGR building. So this is 26 minutes before he took his first shot. So we have that confirmed. We also have confirmed that the radios that local law enforcement gave the Secret Service sniper teams were never used by the Secret Service.
What questions do you still have?
Well, I've got a lot of questions, and what I've found based on my experience is when a tragic incident like this occurs, it's not just one thing that gets missed, it's a series of things, and as more and more reporting comes out, it appears to be just that. There's a number of missteps here. It's not just one. The communications, I agree with the senator, the communications is a big part here. It appears as though they've identified this individual. It appears as though law enforcement was in charge of making sure that that structure was secure, but they weren't communicating, and they weren't communicating in real time. So we'll see what else the investigation plays out, whether it was poor planning, whether there wasn't enough resources, has been reported as well. So I think there's still a number of questions to be answered here.
We're nearly out of time, but it's struck me that former President Trump has gone out of his way to praise the men and women who responded to the shooting. How smart is that, considering they are putting their lives on the line for people like him and the people they protect?
Well, look, his detail, the individuals that rushed that stage and jumped on him to protect the president, those are the folks that he sees each and every day, and they're professionals. I think different parts of the service are there to do other jobs at that rally. And so the criticism that I have, and perhaps others, is not with that detail or not with the individuals around the president, but with other elements of the service, particularly the leadership of the service not doing their job and making sure that other parts of that protection detail in securing that rally did their job.
Chad Wolf, appreciate your time and your analysis today.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.